are you doing here?
I'm practicing
Why do you guys need to practice?
because we suck.
Congratulations on the documentary. I loved watching it. I mean, as someone who's listened to your music as since I was a kid, it was just really cool to like learn more about the band trajectory. And I guess my first question is, I would love to know what made this the perfect time to make a documentary.
I think I asked myself the same question when we were approached to make the documentary. I was like, why would we make a documentary now? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was so much to celebrate right now. And I think the band is experiencing something incredible after the pandemic with the I'm Just a Kid challenge kind of boosting stuff for us. And then we took it and ran with it with social media. And now we're content creators slash band guys, and the shows are bigger than ever, and it feels like a resurgence of the style, resurgence of Simple Plan, and so there was a lot to talk about. And I think we also wanted the opportunity to take a look back and see where we came from, what we've gone through, and what we had to go through to still be here today. So it was a great opportunity, and we said, why not?
Yeah, it felt like quite the significant milestone, 25 years as a band. That's a big anniversary. That's a big moment. Not every band, makes it to that. And yeah, it felt like great timing to and we haven't been really good at that, looking back and celebrating and kind of taking it all in. And, so yeah, it felt like, hey, let's do it. And maybe this movie will even bring new people to discover the band and hear our music.
No, absolutely. And I guess the two of you go way back to, your high school years playing in a band called Reset, and then later on with Simple Plan. What is something about your partnership that has remained the same throughout the years, and something that has changed about your connection?
Good question. We've been playing together since we're 13 years old. And I don't know that there's a lot of band that can, say that. So I think
something that stays the same is kind of the personality dynamic. You know what I mean? Like we are, even from the high school days, there's like some parts of our personality that are kind of the same. You know what I mean? Like Chuck has always been someone extremely driven, a little to obsession. But that's kind of his thing. He's more of the like managing and behind the scenes kind of guy, making the phone calls, where I'm the front guy. I've also am probably the biggest contributor when it comes to music for Simple Plan. Like I sit there, demo everything out, kind of figure out all the parts, write everything along with Chuck, and I serve as the front guy. You know what I mean? So that hasn't changed. Our personalities, who we kind of fit. And even with the other two guys, Sebastian and Jeff, every personality has kind of stayed the same. As far as changing, it's really hard to tell what has changed because we've always had the same goal. And it feels like, because when we're in this band, we always just keep our eyes on what's coming up next. We haven't really had a chance to change too much. You know what I mean? We are the same guys playing a lot of the same songs that we played for the last 20 years. We play I'm Just a Kid every night. We play Perfect every night. So yeah, I'm not really sure what has changed. Any ideas?
Yeah, I was gonna say I just want to add two things to that. I think a lot of it maybe didn't change because like I was looking, what blew my mind, I was looking at that footage that we found, like our second show or first show we've ever played in a basement, and we swap. You went to play drums, and I got on the microphone, and fast forward 32 years later,
and we still do it.
That's still part of the show. I mean, like
that's because you always wanted to be a singer, but you can't sing.
Well, there you go.
I was rather be a drummer, but nobody else could sing.
In the back, so
nobody could sing except for me.
I feel in a way like and maybe that's the tough part, but in a way, I think we saw early on that we needed each other to accomplish what we wanted to do, and maybe that was frustrating at times, for each of us, but at the same time, it was like, hey, like it's better together, and that friendship and that has kind of endured. And I think that's amazing. And, I think the one thing that's changed is when we were young, we didn't have the maturity maybe to rationalize that and to grasp that or understand it. And I think that that's why our first band broke up and we didn't speak for 2 years, because we didn't realize how how precious it was and how you can lose everything if you are not careful with, with what you have with friendship or anything like that in life. So I think now as we're older, even though sometimes there can be some tension and everything, I think we realize that there's that red line and we don't want to cross it because what we've built is special and we want to protect it. So I think that's maybe one thing that's changed.
Well, I agree with that. And I think it's so cool to see a little bit more about your partnership in the film. Another thing that I'd love to know is, Chuck, I was surprised that did so much of the heavy lifting in the early days of like, lying about being the band manager to, get potentially signed and then organizing a trip so Mark Hoppus could be part of the music video. What motivated you to invest so much in the band in the early days?
Yeah, when I was a kid growing up in Canada, like my first dream was to be a hockey player. And then around 13, I realized that wasn't in the cards and I discovered music. Our French teacher told us, hey, well, you guys should be in a band. I have no idea why he did that to this day. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll start playing drums. And I wasn't the most talented musician at all. But the one thing that I had was I had that drive, that desire. I really wanted it so bad. I wanted things to work out for us. And I think I was willing to do anything to make it happen. So that kind of became, I couldn't necessarily bring the most amazing drum fills and the most amazing, like musical talent, but that's the one thing that I could do. And I wanted that dream to happen so bad that I was like, okay, that's going to be my thing. And yeah, I think it still is to this day with this band. Like each guy has his role, right? And that's kind of been my role.
Absolutely. And Pierre, you also talk about, like your challenges with anxiety. And I think mental health isn't talked about enough in the music industry. I would love for you to share more about that and why you chose to include that in the film.
Well, I think that this band started right where things started to shift, and that's why I think you saw the arrival of pop punk and like emo. Right? Why was it called emo? Because suddenly you've got a bunch of people in bands who are really showing their emotions. And at the time before that, in the 90s, people didn't really talk about depression or anxiety or needing maybe some therapy, needing to talk to someone, and we luckily were part of that shift where today it's so accepted. It's so common knowledge that everyone should speak to someone and to reach out for help. So I guess being a band in that transitional phase was kind of defining for what Simple Plan is, because we were some of the first bands that would say like, hey, do you ever feel like breaking down? Do you ever feel out of place? Do you feel alone? Well, welcome to my life. You know what I mean? So, and that gave a safe haven for a lot of fans that were listening, that were feeling these things, that are going through their parents' divorce, or they're going through getting bullied at school, or they're going through not knowing what life is going to hold for them. I think sometimes when you feel those moments and you feel like you're the only person going through this, when you hear some of your idols or or bands that you idolize talk about that, you're like, oh my God, I feel heard. I feel like it's going to be okay. If they're going through that and they're where they are today, it makes you feel better. So it was very cool to be part of that. And yeah, I have, I've learned how to deal with it, but there's some moments in my life where anxiety kind of creeped in for the first time. That was very terrifying. That was like, I was like, what the hell's happening? I'm going to have a heart attack. Why? I'd call my wife, and at the time we weren't married yet, but I'd call her and she would kind of help me calm down. And I didn't know what was happening in my body. And it was very, very strange. And when I started to understand that these were symptoms of something happening to me, it made me feel more at ease. And now I have, different tools that I can use to kind of calm myself down. But when you don't know any of that stuff and you feel alone, it's terrifying. So I'm glad that we can be that lifeline for some people and hopefully inspire them or make them realize that they're not alone and they can reach out for help.
Simple Plan was one of the first bands that I felt like I could help out.
It's 20 years later. Sometimes it feels like nothing's changed.
Congratulations on the documentary. I loved watching it. My first question to you is, obviously this doc is filled with archival footage from your early days together as well, which I thought was incredible. Was there a particular video or moment that you forgot about and that you were surprised to see in the making of this film?
Many. Many. I think a lot of the hairstyles were awful. I think every time I see myself on screen and I think my daughter looks like me was something that was really going like, oh my God, I mean, look how it was like when I was younger, that's pretty awesome. I thought when I pop into frame as Pierre and Chuck are arguing and I say, we have a pre-show argument, that makes me laugh every single time I see it. It was pretty accurate back then, specifically. But I mean, I'm so grateful for Patrick to have been there with his camera all those years because it's it's a beautiful memory, especially 25 years later, and we're in this era with Simple Plan where like everything seems to be going amazing, and to be able to look back on that film that has a beautiful beginning and an end, but really it's not over because we stopped shooting last fall, but we're on tour. We've been on tour ever since, and we've got the whole year mapped out ahead of us. I mean, it's pretty great. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And one of my favorite parts of it is just seeing you guys play a show in Montreal. And then that basically enables you guys getting signed through
Yes.
Records. What do you remember about that night?
I remember a lot about that night. I remember it was crazy because we'd recorded a couple demos, and it was like they were meant to be secret, but I had shared them with all my friends, like not just like played them in the CD player and played them in house parties we would have and all that. So when we got to fill that room with all our friends, and you can see in the front row, my sister's there, my cousin's there, like some friends from high school I haven't seen since, they were all at that show. And it's the same case for all the other band members. Like everybody's friends were there, and they're part of the story. It's not like, it's not like we just like kind of took off. I was like, all right, see you never, like they still come to shows, and we just played a show in Pierrefonds, which is where we all went to high school last week. And some people texted me, it's like, hey, I'm going to be at the show. I'm like, I haven't seen you in 10 years. It's amazing. And so we got to hang out, and that was very full circle for me.
Oh, I love that so much. And I guess something else that I really enjoyed here is, seeing other incredible artists who were there for you throughout your career, including, Avril Lavigne, Mark Hoppus, and more. Reflecting on those long-standing friendships, what is the best part about being in the pop punk scene together, often playing festivals and going on tour?
Well, I think it's clear in the doc that early on we struggle with writing that line between the pop world and being on popular radio stations, and still wanting to be on Warped Tour, because those are all the bands that we grew up listening to and that heavily influenced our sound and who we wanted to be as a band. And to hear some of our, I'm gonna say our peers, but people that we admired, like the guys from The Offspring, and obviously Mark Hoppus, say that he liked us. And that was just like, that was such a stamp of approval back then. And today, to reflect back on that, to have those bands take us on tour, to have those bands be willing to speak in a documentary about everything that we've been up to for the past 25 years is huge. And it's like I still can't believe it. Like, we've been touring with Offspring, we've got Mark in there, and he sang on our first album when we were nobodies. He had nothing to gain from that, and he still wanted to do it. Like, it's beautiful attitude. I love it.
Oh, that's so sweet. And I think that's incredible that you guys are still so close throughout the years. Okay, so I have to ask this. I'm just a kid, had a resurgence through TikTok, which you also talk about in the documentary. Why do you think kids nowadays, and kids back then, why do people still resonate with this song till this day?
That's a good question, and what I've started telling people is, imagine yourself like younger, maybe when you found out about the song, maybe you're 13, 14, and think about the problems you may have had back then, right? And now you're an adult, like you're in your 40s, late 30s, 40s, and think about the problems you have now. Like, what seems more important? I know whatever was you were going on, you were going through when you were younger, seems like it filled up your whole being, but that's the hormones. I think adults nowadays can identify with that feeling a little bit more, because there's layers and layers of responsibilities, and especially when you have families and work and bills to pay and all that, the song kind of takes on a whole new meaning. And it's not something you could have planned. It's not something we thought about when we were writing it, but it's true. It happens, and I guess that's why people can still relate to it.
No, absolutely. I think I have my I'm just a kid moment. Like I remember being a kid watching, Cheaper by the Dozen. There's like a really iconic scene where they're getting in the school and the song plays, and
Mhm.
that just brings me back in time. So I
Amazing.
think I'm just excited that more people are getting to know this song through TikTok. And I guess continuing to talk about social media. I mean, the band is super active on socials. So how do you guys juggle content creation with making music and going on tour?
Well, it kind of works out for us because we we've never been the band that can write and sort of put out ideas when we're on tour. We need to be done with touring, take a break, get some rest, and then we're like, okay, it's time to write some songs, and then we get into it. That's sort of been the way we work. Like when we're on tour, we're really focused on the show, really focused on being healthy, sleeping good, and all that, and sort of try to sing all day, grab a guitar, and try to come up with ideas would be a little bit too much. So we don't do that, which makes a lot of time because there is a lot of downtime on tour for content. So every day we have at least an hour blocked off to do content, whether that's being used or not, but it's there, it exists. So we have our sound checks, we have content days, and whenever someone has an idea, we send it to each other. It's like, hey, what do you think? Or how do you think we can adapt this trend to make it fit what we do as a band? Or like, okay, tonight we should shoot a performance and post it. Like there's always something going on. And back in the early 2000s, the way for people to find out about your band was through TV and radio. And maybe you did an interview on a TV show, and but now like we are our own marketing team, and our social media is how we reach fans and non-fans. So it's important, and we do it.
Yeah, I know it. And it's really cool because you get to connect with fans a lot. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you is obviously your music has evolved while also keeping true to your roots. You share in the film that your most recent album is actually your all-time favorite.
It is.
How did the process of writing and recording that album stand out to you in comparison to the previous ones the band released?
Well, it's a it's always been very funny to explain, but on the latest album that came out in 2022, the main inspiration behind it was Simple Plan. We're just like, hey, instead of going like, oh, we should be like this, we should be like this, like just make Simple Plan songs, And I think that brought us a little bit of emo that maybe wasn't there on the previous album. It brought out a little bit of joy, a little bit of fun, and I think songs like Ruin My Life and Antidote and Slow Motion and Iconic, they came out great, and I love the way it sounds, and I think it's a fun album. And whenever we play any of those songs live, like I'm glad to see that some people are paying attention to the new stuff as much as the old stuff. And now we've got a new song that's coming out on Friday that's featured in the doc called Nothing Changes, and that's a super fun song as well. So I'm very, very glad with what we've been releasing recently.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect segue to my next question, which is, in addition to doing the documentary, you also came up with the soundtrack. You're sharing some unreleased demos with fans and also the brand new song, Nothing Changes. What can you share about the experience of that and what fans can expect?
Well, I think it was only natural that most of the music behind what the images you were seeing were going to be Simple Plan songs. I've also worked myself on some of the score, which are mostly always very much like interpretations of Simple Plan songs, like so it always leads you into the next scene that will feature Perfect or will feature Crazy or like any of the songs from the repertoire. But I think it was kind of some fun, like when we're talking about the early days, like there's old demos that didn't make the cut for the first album at all, but then we're listening back, we're just like, this is okay, this is not embarrassing, we can release this. I think it's going to be interesting for some people to see what we were up to before we actually found our sound, and I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to say, oh my god, it's my new favorite song, because that's just the way it is, and that's great, and that's fine. And I think there seems to be a Simple Plan song for every mood, because because that's what ended up happening in the documentary.
Yeah, and I guess you're going on the road again for a Bigger Than You Think tour. What makes this upcoming tour the biggest you've ever done?
Well, it's been a while since we've headlined in America. So that's what we're doing. You know, we've had a headliner tour in Australia last year, Japan as well, some places in Europe as well, and yes, definitely Europe, 2024. And now, like it's been a while since we headlined in the United States. You know, we've done the uh, Avril tour 2 summers in a row, Offspring tour the summer before, and now we're just like, okay, let's do our own thing. So we brought our friends Bowling for Soup and 303 and Lolo, and it's gonna be a good time. Like, I mean, if you made a playlist of all the best songs of these artists, I mean, you've got many hours of fun and smiles on your face. So I think it's a no brainer for people when they see the lineup to come see the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my last question for you is, what is like the biggest, what are some of the biggest highlights from the band, maybe for you on your own personal experience, not just what is shown in the documentary?
Oh man, uh, biggest highlights. I mean, I've got to see the world, which is, like I remember when we had just gotten back from South Africa. This was after the Still Not Getting Any tour, and we took pictures of lions, and I'm showing them to my grandpa back then, and he'd never gotten out of Montreal. Like he'd never gone anywhere, and I'm just like showing him these things. He's like, "Oh, I've only seen those on TV. What's a lion for, though?" He's like, "What's the use of having lions on?" I was just like, he's lived in this city in poverty for a long time, and then finally got a decent job and he was able to provide for his family. And I'm just there like, here's a picture of a lion I saw last week. It's like it was so, it really puts things in perspective and how lucky we are that we got to see the world when most people don't. And we got to do that by doing something that we love, which is getting on stage and playing music. So it's yeah, I think that would be the highlight for me, which is basically the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a great way to end our interview. Thank you so much, Seb, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. And you. Thanks for taking the time.